Untangling Pandas and Pans is a podcast about two little-known medical disorders characterized by the sudden and dramatic onset of symptoms such as obsessions and compulsions, vocal or motor tics, and restricted eating behaviors, and a whole host of other symptoms following a strep or other bacterial or viral infection. I have the privilege of interviewing some of the top researchers and clinicians in this rapidly growing area, known by various names such as immune-mediated neuropsychiatric disorders, infection-associated neuroimmune disorders, and autoimmune encephalitis, or simply PANDAS and PANS. My name is Dr. Susan Manfull. I am a social psychologist, the executive director of the Alex Manfull Fund, and the mother of Alex Manfull, who died at 26 years old due to PANDAS, a disorder my husband and I knew next to nothing about, certainly not that our daughter could die from it.
This is episode 5 of Untangling Pandas and Pans, recorded August 10th, 2024.
It's my pleasure today to have with me Shari Stralson and April Renee, two women, two moms, two professionals who have taken on a monumental task to pass a bill in California that will require health insurance coverage of doctor-prescribed treatments for children diagnosed with PANDAS and PANS. This is AB2105. Sponsored by Assembly Member Josh Lowenthal. This is the second time around for this legislation. They began last year with AB907, also sponsored by Assembly Member Lowenthal. And even though the bill passed unanimously through all the various steps in the House and the Senate, when it reached the governor's desk, Governor Newsom chose not to sign the bill. 3,000 miles away in another state, here in New Hampshire, I was crushed. And I know that I was not alone when I received the news that this bill didn't pass. So I can only imagine how you felt. And yet you began again. So today, I would like to talk about the bill, certainly, AB 2105, but I'd also like to talk about what has driven you. Neither one of you have a background in legislative work, in law, in politics, in any related field, as best I can understand, and yet that did not stop you from taking on this task. So before we talk about AB 2105, tell me how this huge effort began. And perhaps I'll start with April for this one. Let's get going.
This began on my son's 16th birthday. I had been denied IVIG for almost a year, and watching him suffer again through another birthday. And this one was really kind of traumatic because we had taken him to New York to see Spider-Man Homecoming. That was his big dream for his 16th birthday. And we knew he was sick and it was very difficult to get him there, but we did it. We got him to the theater and he had a very bad accident. An OCD flare caused him to go running out of a packed theater. And he ended up coming back with a face full of blood. He had hurt himself in the process of trying to escape this, intense OCD reaction he had to his brother touching a seat. So when he came back, we were very traumatized, his brother and I, and we had to exit the theater and file an incident report and get him back to the hotel so he could recuperate. So we got back and that was it. I emailed my senator that night. I was very upset. I didn't know what else to do. I had tried everything, DMHC. My husband was writing appeals at the time. And so I emailed Senator Gonzalez, and this was December 22nd. So it was a holiday season. So when the holidays ended, January 2nd, I got a response from her office, which was a phone number to DMHC, did not work, and a legislative request form. And so I just thought, let's do it, And so I started the process of filling it out. And it was quite complicated because they wanted to know problem and solution and cost to the state. So it did take time. It took me 4 months, but that was the beginning of starting legislative work. I had to figure out the calendar and how to, how to write a legislative proposal. So that was the first step.
In my mind, journey is an overused word. But in this particular case, I think for both of you, this has turned into a journey. And it takes a lot of courage to start. What gave you that courage, April?
I just felt like I had asked so many people for help and nobody was listening that I couldn't ask anybody anymore. I knew right then and there is if it's not, it has to start somewhere. It might as well be me. I might as well I might as well try, and I tell my students that all the time. I teach second grade. So, we're very motivating to the little ones. If you dream it, you can do it. If you reach for the stars, always try your best. So if I expect that from my 7 and 8 year olds, I just thought, might as well use that on myself. I'm going to try. Reach for the stars. What's the worst that could happen? I could fail, but at least I tried. So I just took a playbook out of my teaching strategies and applied it to myself.
So, Shari, how did you get involved?
So I am part of the Hold PANDAS Facebook community. For me, that has been a huge lifeline and saving grace. And I think it's really one mom pulling another mom out of the trenches when it comes to that community and trying to understand what's happening, to offer support. I have met 2 of my best friends, and I hadn't met them in person. They were my virtual best friends for several years. And they were the ones that I spoke to on a daily basis and texted on the hardest days and trying to navigate the treatment, the frustration, the pain of treatments not working. They have been a very big part of my lifeline. And one day I just remember getting a notification about a post in a local Southern California Facebook PANS group. And that was April's post. And she said, is anyone sick and tired of being sick and tired? Who wants to work on legislation? And I said, yes, finally. I have a son who is 15 today. And at that point, we had been dealing with PANS for several years, and his situation was quite severe. And I didn't know what else to do but to work on legislation. I just knew I had to be doing something. So when April posted that, it was like a sign. And I just remember responding along with a few others. And then April coordinated our first Zoom link, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. April, when you posted that, what did you expect?
I wasn't on the Facebook groups. I didn't even have social media, Susan. I called Wendy Nawara after I finished my form, and I had talked to my local legislators, and she's like, build a team, get on Facebook. And so I didn't know what to expect. I joined Facebook, and, I looked for support groups that Wendy had told me about, and I just posted it with fingers crossed. And literally within 30 seconds, I had 3 people respond, right, Shari? It was like boom, boom, boom. It seemed like quick. And our team began. I mean, I think I posted it on a Wednesday or Thursday, and we had our first meeting that Saturday. So
Whoa.
It was quick. We're ready. I mean, there was just a need, somebody just had to light the fire, and we've worked well together since.
Social media really has played an important role, hasn't it? And as Shari, as you pointed out, in terms of support, it's played an important role. And April, in terms of communication, getting the word out there. Mm-hmm. And now that you are working on this legislation, it is certainly playing a role in communicating to those of us who follow you about how we can be helpful and what your progress is, and in general, what's going on. It's pretty amazing. how valuable a tool it's turned out to be.
Incredibly valuable.
So this is not easy work that the two of you and your team are doing. I know it's not easy. How do you keep your spirits up?
Want to go first, Shari?
I just think the wave and as we go through the legislative process, we knew absolutely nothing about what it takes for a bill to become a law, aside from the Schoolhouse Rock song. And every step of the way, I think we were just the excitement that this little idea that grew from the inspiration of all the other states that came before us, and they were telling us we could do it. And then we would hit the first stage, and that was the first Assembly Health Committee hearing. And we didn't know what to expect going into it, and we were all nerves. And I think as a PANS parent, we're so used to being told no, or we're so used to an adverse response. And when the Assembly members spoke out at that committee, I just remember that feeling of solidarity, of validation, of excitement, and most importantly, hope. So I think from that point on, that's what's kept us going, is the planning and the preparation and the unity and the solidarity and building our network and collaboration. It's about collaboration more than anything. It's being able to create this community together. It's not just California, it's all of us. It's not just in the United States, it's this network that we are a part of around the world.
I feel the same way. Community is so important. And in our community, we did not, at least in California, we did not have one. You know, we were all isolated. Our kids were in the shadows. They had no, we had Pandas Network, and I know they're doing a lot of things, but for my son, I didn't see a community. And so I think now, meeting all of you and all the other states coming together and all of us working together, it feels like community. And when your community is strong, you can do things, you have the support, you have the structure, you have people you can lean on. And I think our PANS community is amazing. I think our kids are phenomenal, and they go out and they're helping other people. And it's just it's growing. You can feel it, you can see it, it's momentum. And it's just about caring about others and putting somebody else before yourself, and thinking about what change can mean to a little child who can get medication, and that's what it's about. Getting kids medication so they can thrive, so they can go to school, so their families can go to work. And, Shari and I and all the members of Cal Coalition, we really care about community, and we want to make sure that our community has the tools they need to succeed. And if that means medicine or, support, then we're going to be there for them.
I think that message came across from the very beginning. I still remember how I came to meet you two and a few other members of your team. There were these posts that were popping up that were so well done. They were informative, they were original, and I felt that they were very authentic. And so I reached out, and we had a Zoom call, and I remember learning about your stories and already feeling a sense of closeness with both of you. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you've come to our 5K in DC last year, and then again this year, attended our dinner in which we celebrate the collaborative efforts of all of the advocacy groups. And I applaud the work of the researchers and the clinicians in our country and beyond. And then I know that you've attended Advocacy Day, and that's an event that we partner with NAPA, the National Alliance of PANS Pandas Action, which we've done last year and again this year, and we'll do next year. So it's been a real pleasure, I know on my part, to get to know you guys. I mentioned that I've followed your posts for quite a long time now. And recently you posted something, April, quoting Eglantine Jebb. Now, I had to look up Eglantine Jebb to see just exactly who she was. And I learned that she was a British social reformer, active around the turn of the century. She founded Save the Children at the end of World War I to address the effects of famine in Austria, Hungary, Germany at the end of World War I. And what she wrote became known as the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. And that was adopted in 1924 by the League of Nations, 100 years ago, coming in November. And then it was later adopted by the United Nations in 1959. In September 1990, it was adopted by the General Assembly. And so I learned a lot by that post. When I looked it up and found the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, which I would encourage all the listeners to do, I read all of the points that are part of this document, but I'll read the first two because I think they're relevant here. That the child must be given the means requisite for its normal development, both materially and spiritually. The child that is hungry must be fed. The child that is sick must be nursed. The child that is backward must be helped. The delinquent child must be reclaimed. And the orphan and the waif must be sheltered. It really sounds pretty simple, pretty basic. And what you write, I'm just going to read that if you don't mind, because I think it's really so relevant here. You wrote that Eglantine Jebb's declaration in 1923, humanity owes the child it best has to give. And that's a powerful reminder, you wrote, of our collective responsibility toward the well-being of children. This statement is particularly poignant when we consider the challenges faced by children suffering from PANS and PANDAS. These disorders, which can cause sudden and severe onset of symptoms, have a profound impact on the lives of affected children and on their families. It is our moral duty to ensure that these children receive the best possible medical care, free from insurance denials and other obstacles. Our commitment to providing the best for our children is not just an ethical obligation, but a reflection of our humanity and compassion. And then you ask Governor Newsom to sign AB 2105 into law, that he has the opportunity to place California at the forefront of compassionate and comprehensive health care, ensuring the children afflicted by these debilitating conditions receive the necessary medical attention and support they desperately need. Why has that message gone unheard in California and in the majority of states in our country?
I've thought about this a lot, Susan, because, I work with little kids. It's my whole day. I think about children every day, all the time. It's my job and it's my moral responsibility. I don't know. I want to know why we don't put children first. I think it's essential. Humanity does owe the child the best it has to give. We start by giving our children everything. They're going to learn to lead with compassion and care, and they're going to treat the next generation that way. So I think it's imperative that as adults and as leaders in our country, we need to be giving everything to the children so they can, grow to become the type of human that we wish to see in others. So I hope that Governor Newsom hears us and that he will put children first in the state of California. Our children deserve the best there is to give, because when we deny children medication or food or whatever it may be, we cripple their potential. And so we need to nurture every child's potential. And if that means providing them with medication so they can get back to school, then that's what we need to do. And this bill costs 1 cent. So why would we deny a child an opportunity to return to school and to thrive when it only costs a penny? So let's put our children first. That's what I think. Thank you.
I had a thought about this because you ask, why has it gone unheard? And on some level, I would disagree that it's gone unheard, because when we have presented this bill to the California legislature, when we presented it to the Assembly and the Senate, it's passed unanimously without opposition at this point. And I do feel like the state hears us. It's whether or not Newsom
right?
hears the legislature.
The state has been phenomenal. Like Shari said at the opening, we have had so much respect coming from our legislators, and we did not expect that when we started this. They have been phenomenal, and they see the need. They're talking to the families, and I think that's what makes the difference. Our families are contacting their representatives, and they're sharing their stories, and they're hearing firsthand. We don't get that with Governor Newsom. We have to go through his layers. And so if he were to sit down with one of our families and have coffee like our representatives do, he'd see right away that this is not a bill you veto. This is a bill you lift up and you give more, because these are kids.
And at the most recent Senate Health Committee hearing, forgive me, I can't remember which senator spoke out, but they were appalled that they were seeing this bill introduced a second time. They were appalled that it hadn't passed the first time around. And so they share the same sentiment. They want this for our children. Yeah. They don't want our children to be denied medication.
Excellent points. And I guess the other very relevant question is, why aren't insurance companies covering this? There are very compelling reasons to cover it.
The California Health Benefits Review Program did the fiscal analysis. They found that it costs less than 1 penny actually to insure these kids, an increase in insurance premiums. So it came from the state of California.
There's that information. And then we all know that in the long run, this certainly is going to cost less money for the insurance companies. We all know, it's said over and over again, that as this disorder becomes more widely known by physicians who are treating these children, that if it's recognized and diagnosed early, that the prognosis is actually very good. And the treatments, when identified early, are really pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and pretty inexpensive. Antibiotics and NSAIDs such as Advil. So what you're doing is raising awareness about these points. Can you tell the listeners what exactly the bill is asking for?
So basically, AB2105 is mandating insurance coverage of all treatment for PANS and PANDAS. And that doesn't mean just IVIG or intravenous immunoglobulins. That includes any treatment that is deemed medically necessary for PANS or PANDAS. So it could include other immunotherapies like rituximab or plasmapheresis.
And cognitive behavioral therapy.
So if a bill like this had been in place when the symptoms first surfaced in your children, what kind of a difference would this have made?
My son lost over 2 years of his life waiting for medication that was prescribed by a treating physician. We knew this is what he needed, and we couldn't get access. The doctors wrote appeal after appeal and couldn't get access. My son would have not had to miss years of school. He would have graduated on time with his friends. He would have stayed in track. He would have thrived. He would have been able to spend time with his family, with his brother. He would have been able to eat food and not lose most of his body weight. My son would have not almost died. This medication would have saved our family from suffering, from financial ruin, from heartache and hardship. And it cost 1 cent.
Wow, that's very powerful testimony. I think what people don't understand or don't fully realize is that these appeals take a long time.
Very long time.
Right. And so to delay the treatment has serious consequences for people with these disorders. Shari, your son is turning 15 today. Happy birthday, Jake.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Do you want to weigh in on what a difference it would have made for your family?
Yes, I will. I will try to do this without being too emotional. It is his birthday today, and we're not celebrating in the way that we want to celebrate. He's not celebrating in the way that he should, because he has lost the last 5 years of his childhood to PANS and PANDAS. We had a very late diagnosis, and it's not just in terms of the insurance companies denying coverage, which we have had to deal with, and we are still currently dealing with those denials. We just got a recent denial for medication a few days ago. So I'm still deep in the thick of this with my son. And the doctors, the specialists that we go to understand how critical early diagnosis and treatment is. They are apprehensive to move forward and be proactive with these immunotherapies because it's exhausting for them to deal with the insurance companies. So for my son, he had an onset of symptoms after a strep throat infection. And we just attributed those behaviors to many things: a move across the country, was it starting a new school? There were so many factors, contributing factors that it could have been. And then when we reached out to our pediatrician, we were told that it was behavioral. So we sought out cognitive behavioral therapy, play therapy, everything we could do, but it wasn't improving. And he was just deteriorating and getting worse. And then finally, after having an assessment done by a neuropsychologist, she just made a brief recommendation in her analysis that said, look into pandas. And it was from there that we found a panda specialist. But at that point, he had been exhibiting symptoms for almost 2 years. And so antibiotics aren't as effective as they could be if they're not done earlier in treatment. So we have really ping-ponged through the ups and downs and the improvements and the losses. And it wasn't until about January of 2020 when things seemed to slide. And I don't know if COVID contributed to that deterioration, but that's when things became unbearable and he was no longer able to function. He was no longer able to leave the house, leave his room, the food restrictions, interact with family members. So from that point on, we have been trying to figure out and determine what area of the immune system do we target? And is this Lyme disease? Is this Bartonella? Is this just immune cell, autoimmune, autoinflammatory? And it's been so confusing because last year, after his 14th birthday, he started to make extraordinary progress. And we were so hopeful that we were on the right path. And he went from not being able to leave the house to snowboarding on Mammoth Mountain and going to Disneyland and skateboarding and just taking on life again. And then we just seem to lose these gains. So when we meet with our specialist and they recommend plasmapheresis as the next step, and they submit to insurance, it was miscoded as pandas, and plasmapheresis was denied twice, even though that's what his hematologist from a world-renowned medical institution is recommending for him. He was later, the other option was to pursue rituximab, and we were denied that twice as well. So our hands are tied in terms of treatment. And so, no, if we had access 5 years ago to treatment and there wasn't a delay in diagnosis, my son would have had his childhood. He would have been attending middle school. He would be preparing for high school right now. He would have his best friends. He would have the relationships with his brothers. And there's just been so much loss associated with these delays.
I'm reminded of another quote that I read not too long ago, and I'm going to read this to you because I think that it sums up how I know I feel. It is something that George Bernard Shaw said. He wrote, "The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of humanity." So in other words, to say that you don't matter. And that's how I feel sometimes when I hear the what's going on across the country and in Europe and around the rest of the world. We know that there's something we can do about these disorders, and yet we're not doing it. Does that resonate with you?
I love that quote. We do matter. We all, I mean, I love that. And it does resonate, but it just takes, like I said, like Shari said, community. Once you stand up and say, not anymore, you're going to see another and another and another and another, and we will get there. It just takes time, and we're doing it together as a community, and we just have to be patient and resolute, but we will get there because these are children, and we just have to keep the drumbeat. We'll get there.
Shari, do you want to add to that?
Caring about humanity and being a part of this effort in California. The first time that we heard other legislators speak out in support of a PANS and PANDAS law, there was just a sense of that hope and faith in humanity. And I remember my husband sharing the news about the passing of AB2105 at that time in the Assembly Health Committee. And I think it's not just about us as parents that fear, that experience this isolation. It's our kids who experience it as well. Mm-hmm. And they feel like someone has turned their back, that the medical community has turned their back on them. And by bringing this to the forefront, by raising awareness about this and having a state talk about it, I know that for my son, he felt very seen. And it was at a very pivotal part of his treatment. And I'm pretty sure he wanted to give up at that point. And then hearing that it was important, hearing that others were speaking about this and caring about it, that's when he started to fight back with his treatment. That's when he started to become invested. And there was a big shift. So just that understanding and that desire to help and care about and be committed to this population, to any population of children, individuals who are going through something like this, it changes the outlook for the better for the kids. And
that's such a good point. I think also that we focus a lot on what the psychiatric, the cognitive, the medical symptoms of this disorder are. And we forget how this affects the individuals who have this, their sense of self, their sense of confidence, their self-respect. And when you see other people working on your behalf, it matters. And I'll share an example that happened in our state. We were able to get the Memorial Bridge lit green last year for Pandas Awareness Day. The Memorial Bridge connects Portsmouth, New Hampshire with Kittery, Maine. There are 3 bridges that connect New Hampshire and Maine, but this is the one that's right in Portsmouth. And it really was meaningful to see the bridge green. But that meaning was captured in a conversation my husband and I had a couple weeks later. We were meeting with an attorney for an entirely different purpose. And he said, okay, I think we've settled this issue. May I change the subject and tell you something personal? And what he said was that his daughter, a teenager, does not like to talk about her diagnosis of pandas, but when she read that the bridge was going to be green, she wanted her dad to drive her over there to see it. And she called another friend of hers who also has been diagnosed with pandas pans and said, would you like to go with me to see this? And that family had already gone. So I think when individuals with these disorders who feel that they haven't been heard, either in doctor offices or psychologists, psychiatrists offices, or by insurance companies, that it is so meaningful to know that you have so many people fighting on their behalf in your state and really across our country. Maybe not in legislatures across our country, but there are lots of people who want to make changes. So do you guys know how inspirational you are to other people? You really are.
No.
I think I'm just in awe of every parent that's in this with us is more extraordinary than the next. So I'm more humbled by this community.
I felt so isolated before all this began. Like I said, I didn't know anybody. My son was sick for 10 years. Like, this started when he was 8. He got better, and then he had another setback, and that's when we needed the IVIG. So I felt so alone. So did he. Like you were saying, Susan, we were living in darkness. We had no hope. We had nowhere to turn. So yeah, now it's meeting all of you and all the nonprofits and the families and seeing kids smile. My son was ashamed to have pandas, but now he goes out. He was in Washington for your event and Napa's event, speaking about why children need access to this medication. So my son has turned into an advocate through all this. And, I'm really proud of him. Our kids are amazing.
They are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So will they be at the Advocacy Day in Long Beach that's coming up? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I live in Long Beach. My family will definitely be there. We're putting on an event, Shari and I, with Cal Coalition at Redondo Beach. We're having our first inaugural Pans Panda community event here. We will be with Assembly Member Josh Lowenthal's office. They'll be sending representatives too, and we're hoping to get other city council members. We just really want to have a community event because we want to bring our families together. We're turning into a close-knit family. That's what it's starting to feel like, right? Like, even if we haven't met each other in person, it's just big hugs and soul sisters and soul brother. Like, we get along, we understand each other's pain. So we really want this to be uplifting, right? We should have passed out of the Senate by the time our event by September 14th. So this is really just a big call to Newsom. Let's sign this bill this year, please. We're not going anywhere. Sign it now. We'll come back bigger next year, stronger. We're not going anywhere. Our kids matter, and it's time. It's time.
And what makes this special is that it's very hard for our friends and family to make it to Sacramento for all of the hearings that have taken place and the advocacy events that have taken place there. But for us to be able to do it locally and have there's a big community in Southern California that has wanted to get involved, and now they have that opportunity. So for a few hours on this beach, we are going to raise awareness. We're going to make sure everyone has an opportunity to submit letters to Governor Newsom, and also hopefully have some speakers for us. The most incredible part is these parents who come and speak and share, and their grandparents and the kids make the decision to share their stories. And that is the heart of all of this, when you hear them bravely and courageously share what they have been through and how treatment has changed the trajectory of their lives. That is what's most impactful. And we hope that Governor Newsom hears their voices.
And Susan, I want to say, I'm sorry, I have to jump in because we've had kids use this experience to get credit in their social studies or civics classes. So this is turning into teachable moments for our youth too, how to get engaged in their community, how to get engaged in politics and creating change. So it's been uplifting in that way too.
Learning that you can make a difference.
Correct.
You can have an impact.
Yeah.
So I hope to be there. My husband and I hope to be there. Please give us the details again. What's the date? Where do people go?
Yes, it's September 14th, 9 a.m. to noon, Redondo Beach at 5000 Ocean Boulevard. We have flyers up on our social media accounts. We're going to have music. We're going to have arts and crafts. We're going to be making our own posters and T-shirts. We're going to have beach activities for the kids. It's a dog beach, too, so bring your pet. And Assemblymember Lowenthal will be there giving, he's so motivational for our community. He's really taken a heart to our families and to helping us overcome these challenges. So he'll be there. His team will be there. Come join us. It'll be a great event.
That sounds great. So tell us, what else can individuals do to help move this forward?
It's important to follow us on social media, Cal Coalition on Instagram and Facebook. That's where you'll receive the most current updates about where we are with the bill. We are anticipating the Senate floor vote by the end of the month. And at that point, it's in Newsom's hands. So we need to make a lot of noise. We need to encourage him to sign this bill into law. Once it's on his desk, letters of support for AB2105 are one of the most important ways to get involved.
Those letters really matter.
Every single one of those letters has been read. Every single one of those letters has been printed out. We made it a point to hand deliver a book of those letters directly to Newsom's office. So they are not overlooked in any way. They are important. They are critical. Those stories and how bravely they're shared in writing, they make a big difference.
They really do. I just wanted to add that when it is time to send letters to Governor Newsom, he can receive letters two ways. One, snail mail, and we can give you the address, or the easiest way is to go directly to his website, ca.gov contact. You will be able to select our bill once it's on his desk and just write a support message right into the contact form on his website. So that will be the easiest way to go directly. But on our Advocacy Day, September 14th, we will have devices for families to do their support letters right there at our event.
People read them, and they really matter. So when this bill passes, when Governor Newsom signs it, what's next for you guys?
The sky's the limit, but we have been talking about advisory councils and looking into going to do some changes with the Department of Education so our children, so they can have more information in the special education realm about pans and pandas. So our children, some children have been denied services because there's not an awareness about this illness in the school system. So as educators, Shari and I feel it's extremely important that we start spreading that awareness within the California public schools and then, out from California. So advisory council and education. Shari?
Yeah, just as educators, that educators spend just as much time with our children as we do. So if they are able to recognize certain signs and behaviors that there's a sudden onset of, and developing those partnerships with parents, mm-hmm. because I know that's a hardship for many of us parents going through this and trying to navigate the academic aspect of this. And many of our children who never required IEPs and special education services initially, once they are diagnosed with PANS and PANDAS, they do require those accommodations to be made, and really partnering with the schools to help them understand what this looks like and how to make those modifications and accommodations in a school setting.
Yeah, because teachers are on the front line. We can see, my son's first symptom was a deterioration in math skills. So teachers are definitely on the front line. We can see a sudden shift in a child's academic capability, and we can notify families. Teachers are amazing, and so we need to give them the support so they can look out for these symptoms. It's a no-brainer to me. It's ground zero.
It's such a good point. Is teachers and school nurses are in such good positions to see changes in behavior, right. As you mentioned, in math skills, but also in handwriting, for example. And perhaps the child who was a participant in the classroom suddenly is no longer attending to what's going on in the classroom and has become fidgety, needs to go to the bathroom more than they used to. There are all sorts of signs that teachers can see that might not jump out as quickly to parents, so they play such an important role.
And then we can also create that empathy and compassion within our classrooms and community for this illness. It starts in our schools. Teach the children about what this illness is so they can, if a student comes, they will understand the chronic absenteeism. They won't be misjudged or thought of as being lazy. Our kids have real medical issues that prevent them from being in the classroom.
Anything else?
The only thing I was thinking was how appreciative and thankful we are for all of the states that came before us and all of the advocates that inspired the language for the bill and met with us in the early days of our legislative planning, and just everyone who shows up. Every time I see you, or I see Vivi or Ramesh or Paul or, and Christine Case, who comes from Colorado, and we just asked her at the drop of a hat. It's just extraordinary. That's what keeps us going too.
But what a pleasure it's been to talk with you both. I admire greatly what you're doing, and being originally from California, your work touches my heart in a very special way. And as most listeners know, having lost our daughter, Alex Manful, to this horrific disorder, we at the Alex Manful Fund, and I think I'm safe to say all the other advocacy groups, are working just as hard as we can to make sure that this does not happen to other people, and to drive home the point that this disorder is treatable. What happened to my daughter did not need to happen, and the length of time that your children have needed to battle this disorder did not need to happen either. So everyone who's listening, we all can make a difference. Let's just work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. It's been an honor.
Thank you. We're not giving up.
Never.
All right, that's a spirit.
This concludes episode 5 of Untangling Pandas and Pans. Thank you for listening. For more information about Pandas and Pans and the Alex Manful Fund, please visit thealexmanfulfund.org. The content in this podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.